Marc, are you here? I thought we were supposed to work on the next video today. Did you draw that?
Oh, yes, I did.
Why?
To break the ice.
But why that?
Well, it worked for the guys that made Luigi's Mansion 2.
Explain.
Okay, so apparently during one of their earliest meetings with Nintendo, neither group could speak each other's native languages, so one of the people there just decided to draw a happy sack on the whiteboard and everyone else thought it was funny. True story.
Huh. That's interesting. So, are you gonna erase that, or...?
Luigi's Mansion 2!
Okay.
Yes, I'm aware that another Halloween has come and gone, but despite us missing out on what is objectively the most overrated time of the year,
Ooh.
we're not going to let that stop us from jumping back into the world of Luigi's Mansion. And I didn't realize until now that this series has been the subject of every Halloween-adjacent video I've done over the past 9 years. My very first Halloween special back in 2016 was all about the first game. Then I talked about the 3DS version in a revisiting episode back in 2018, and then I reviewed Luigi's Mansion 3 back in 2020. But not including the arcade game that was made by Capcom of all people, Luigi's Mansion 2 was the one I've been holding out on for the longest time. Obviously, the main reason why we're finally getting around to reviewing this game is because it got an HD re-release for the Nintendo Switch this past summer, but the original 3DS game has been near the top of my bucket list for God knows how long. And this neglected little teenager right here is what's kept me from reviewing it. For years, I've had to limit how much I could talk about 3DS games because I've never had the means of recording my own footage. But if you've seen my Super Smash 3DS Revisited episode on Super Mario 64, you'll know that's no longer the case. So, in the words of any celebrity having an affair, there's no problem a shitload of money can't solve. I remember when this game was first announced at E3, may it rest in peace. It was 2011, I was 14 years old watching Nintendo's press conference on G4, may that also rest in peace. And I was already completely sucked up into the 3DS hype, but to see that it was getting some Luigi's Mansion action at some point in its future was enough to make me scream, "There's gonna be a Luigi's Mansion 2!" I was very easy to excite back then.
You know, considering how the GameCube was originally designed with stereoscopic 3D capabilities in mind, a sequel for the 3DS actually makes a lot of sense in retrospect. Although Nintendo themselves weren't directly responsible for this game, however, the bulk of development this time around was handled by our good friends at Next Level Games, the same team that gave us Mario Strikers.
By the way, when I said this in my Luigi's Mansion 3 review,
please make another Mario Strikers,
I didn't mean this. I should have been more specific.
But after Luigi's Mansion 2 was first unveiled to the public in the summer of 2011, it ended up getting grouped into the Year of Luigi celebration with a bunch of other Luigi-centered games, so it wasn't officially released until 2013. In March. Random? Oh, and I'm not sure why, but it was only called Luigi's Mansion 2 in some parts of the world, while in other countries, like here in the US, it was called Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. Were they just worried that a numbered sequel would be too alienating for newcomers? Well, the HD version retains the numbers, so we're just gonna call it Luigi's Mansion 2 from now on.
It's a good thing there even is a Switch version now, so that I can play this game without having to borrow my brother's copy, which is how I was able to record the 3DS version in the first place. The last time I remember trying to play it was maybe 8 to 10 years ago, but now that I've actually beaten it, how does it compare to the first game? Well, after the events of the original Luigi's Mansion, Professor Egad presumably took up residence in this place called Evershade Valley to continue his ghost research. What brought him here to begin with, however, was the titular Dark Moon, which has mysterious pacifying effects on all the ghosts in the area. But while he's in his laboratory working alongside some friendly green ghosts, King Boo suddenly arrives on the scene and uses the power of his crown jewel to destroy the Dark Moon, causing a thick purple fog to completely engulf the valley, and killing all the good vibes as every ghost turns bad. Meanwhile, Luigi's at his house, presumably one of the lower-ranked mansions from the first game, doing his best impression of my dad watching football. But he's soon woken up by some strange sounds coming from his TV, and Professor Egad suddenly appears on the screen. But before Luigi can react appropriately, the professor uses a new and largely untested invention of his called the Pixelator to pull Luigi through the TV and into EGAD's bunker. The professor then tasks Luigi with traveling across Evershade Valley and capturing all the ghosts because, in his own words, Luigi is the best and only ghost wrangler he knows. So, unfortunately for Luigi, he doesn't really have a choice. As for the Dark Moon, well, after King Boo shattered it into pieces, each fragment became corrupted with dark powers. So along the way, Luigi will also need to retrieve the pieces of the Dark Moon so that EGAD can remove the dark energy from them, put them back together, and bring peace back to the valley. So that's the setup, short, sweet, and to the point. But I find it really strange how they play up this mystery behind who could have been responsible for destroying the Dark Moon and taking control of the ghosts, when they already showed us in the beginning.
Yeah, and for someone that's supposed to be an expert in paranormal research, why does it take so long for EGAD to figure out that King Boo is the one behind it all? I'd probably buy it if King Boo's portrait was left untouched after the first game, but EGAD admits later that he sold it at a garage sale. So that means whoever bought it off him must have been the one to release King Boo. But I can only assume, since how exactly he got out is never really explained. Was it Helen Gravely? I'll bet you it was Helen Gravely.
Hold up. He sold King Boo's portrait in a garage sale? I'm sorry, can we just talk about that for a second? I know Professor EGAD has always been as bright as humanity's future, but he is clearly off his meds in this game. He says he became an authority in the field of paranormal studies after the first game, but keep in mind, this is the same paranormal research expert that forces Luigi into dangerous situations and claims it's to build character, dozes off when he's supposed to be tracking down pieces of the Dark Moon, hires Toads to be his assistants, and then sends them to curate mansions related to their greatest fears, presumably so that he doesn't have to pay them right away. And he only realizes now that working for him is terrible. But I do agree with him about one thing. Toads are kind of stupid. That's not exactly how he worded it, but that's pretty much what he says.
Moving on to the gameplay, Luigi's Mansion 2 once again revolves around capturing ghosts like its predecessor, but it doesn't exactly follow the same structure. The first game has Luigi wandering around the inside of just one mansion, while the sequel has multiple mansions for you to explore. Gloomy Manor, Haunted Towers, Old Clockworks, Secret Mine, and Treacherous Mansion.
And I just realized the first letters in their names spell out the word ghost. Next level must be some really big Patrick Swayze fans.
Each mansion has their own overarching goals for you to accomplish, and they are all broken up into missions that get you one step closer towards achieving that goal. There are 5 main missions, except for Secret Mine, which only has 3, and then the 6th mission has you going up against a boss to retrieve a piece of the Dark Moon. Then you bring it back to the bunker for EGAD to wash away all the negative energy emanating from it, and then the fog engulfing the next mansion disappears, allowing you to move forward. You also get a 1 to 3 star ranking at the end of every mission, and I'm guessing you went ahead and 3-starred each one, right Marc?
Actually, no. Apparently all you get for beating each mission with 3 stars is another medal on your save file, so I decided against it. Plus, with how picky this game can be when giving you rankings, I'm sure trying to master it would have destroyed what little is left of my sanity. I know there are people that weren't and still aren't really fond of the game's switch to a mission-based structure, and at first I thought I wouldn't be either, because I really enjoyed the process of unlocking further parts of the mansion in the original, but it didn't really bother me at all. I think it has to do with this game being made for a handheld, since something with this kind of linearity lends itself to occasional short bursts of action on the go. And yet, somehow, for being a handheld sequel to a console game, Luigi's Mansion 2 managed to take twice as long to beat as the original. For some, that might be exhausting, because on paper, this game is much more formulaic and repetitive than the first one. Throughout my entire 12-hour journey, I was going through every mansion in the exact same manner, not M-A-N-O-R. And aside from Secret Mine having 3 main missions instead of 5, like Marcy mentioned earlier, Luigi's Mansion 2 does little to from that structure. The original game had a plethora of mini-boss encounters on top of the normal boss fights, but on the occasion that mini-bosses pop up in this game to break up the monotony, they're mostly just onslaughts of the same ghosts you already go around catching normally, or slightly stronger variations. The only exception I can recall is with the 3 sisters in the graveyard and Haunted Towers. Even the bosses all go down in the same way, despite the fights themselves being pretty interesting. But we'll go a little deeper into them later. And normally something like that would bother me too, but I think what helped keep it from getting boring were the new means of exploration and ghost busting. For one thing, Luigi's new Poltergust 5000 proves to be more of a super sucking vacuum trap than the previous model. Weakening Ghosts also fills up this new power gauge, and when it gets to a certain point, you can press the A button to drain more health from the ghosts and capture them a lot quicker. This game also adds a dodging mechanic, so by pressing the B button while vacuuming, you can jump and avoid taking hits from other ghosts nearby. Unless it decides to propel you right into them. Oh, for fuck. Luigi still has a health meter like he did in the first game, but every now and then you might find these gold dog bones in random parts of the area. And if you lose all your health and get a game over while carrying a gold bone, Polterpup comes in, snags it, and basically revives you.
Oh yeah, Luigi gets a ghost puppy now. And he apparently leaves invisible droppings. Charming. Though he is the focus of our least favorite missions in the game, where he pops in and takes things we need to progress, and then you have to chase him down and ultimately capture him to get them back. These just grind the game to a screeching halt and are almost never fun.
Bad doggy.
Capturing ghosts is about the same as it was in the first game, but instead of stunning the ghosts with your flashlight before capturing them, now you have to flash ghosts with the strobe bulb before sucking them up. I kind of like this a little more. It's less finicky than the original, and it also leaves the ghosts stunned longer, so you have more time to capture them before they come to their senses. You can also use this on bats, frogs, mice, and other little critters to turn them into money and hearts.
Rats! Yes! Rats!
Or flash these green panels to open doors and activate machines like this one that makes water pour down on a small plant to have it grow into a beanstalk.
What just happened?
I have no idea. Luigi's flashlight also has a new dark light function, which you activate by holding the Y button. This shows you where certain ghosts might have gone, and most importantly, it reveals hidden objects like doors and furniture. But before you can actually make them materialize, they release spirit orbs that you'll have to suck up with the poltergust, and if you take too long, on your next attempt, you have to suck them all up again, no matter how many spirit orbs you might have caught before you missed them the first time. The dark light also overheats after a while, and you have to wait for it to cool down before using it again. But fortunately, there are upgrades you can obtain to mitigate stuff like this. Coins and dollar bills are all back from the first game, but rather than determine which mansion you get at the end like in the original, the money you collect actually affects your progress. It's tied to a level-up system of sorts where you unlock upgrades to your poltergust the more money you earn from missions. Not only does this include a dark light that doesn't overheat as quickly, but you also get an extended power gauge that lets you drain more health from ghosts when catching them, and a completely new poltergust model that makes the power gauge charge up faster for a much bigger suck! Oh, and standing in for the Game Boy Horror from the first Luigi's Mansion is a customized original DS model that EGAD nicknames the Dual Screen. It allows Luigi to communicate with the professor from outside the bunker, access an in-game map that shows how many floors are in the current mansion and which rooms need to be reached to complete the mission, and provides a list of objectives to help you keep track of what you're supposed to do. And just like a real DS, you have to keep the screen brightness down so that it doesn't die too quickly.
Oh, dark days. Luigi's Mansion 2 gives you a lot to do, and that doesn't just include catching ghosts. This game focuses a lot more on secrets, puzzle solving, and exploration than the first one, and I have to admire it for that. Sometimes you'll find special bonus areas where you have to complete challenges in a certain amount of time to get a reward. You can also find inflatable bulbs that you can grab with the poltergust, then blow into to use them as balloons and float up to higher platforms and move across large gaps. But if you find gold bulbs, you can make coins appear and be rewarded with something if you grab them before they disappear. Treacherous Mansion is particularly puzzle-heavy. It's a museum with uniquely themed exhibits, and it makes great use of these e-gates by having you travel back and forth between the exhibits and use aspects of them to complete different tasks, like grabbing a log in the jungle exhibit, bringing it to the ancient exhibit to light it on fire, then bringing it to the Ice Age exhibit to melt this thick wall of ice, and reaching the far left side of the room to use the dark light and free a toad from within his portrait. Come to think of it, the e-gates might be one of my favorite additions to the game. Secret Mine and Treacherous Mansion are the only areas that use them, but this cutscene showing Luigi using them for the first time is adorable.
Oh. Hello. 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 Hello.
It's so cute.
I know.
Every other mansion has its own theme and aesthetic as well. Gloomy Manor is the most traditional of them, but then you have a giant botanical garden in Haunted Towers, an abandoned clock factory in Old Clockworks, and a frozen mining shaft in Secret Mine. So it wouldn't really be appropriate to call this game Luigi's Mansion 2 or even Luigi's Mansions, since 3 of the 5 areas aren't technically mansions. But then again, I guess Luigi's Mansions plus a giant botanical garden, an abandoned clock factory, and a frozen mining shaft wouldn't have been as catchy.
When I was a kid, I remember not getting very far in this game because I would get confused as to how to solve some of the puzzles and spend a lot of time trying to figure them out. But whether I was just a lot more impatient back then, or if there was something else, most likely the former, this time around, I was able to get through it just fine without needing to rely on walkthroughs. I only used a guide when looking for the gems and finding all the boos, since I figured it would take too much time for me to find them on my own.
Yep, gems are back from the first Luigi's Mansion, one of which looks like a plumb bob from The Sims. And while some can be found in more than one mission per area, others are tied to specific missions.
These rocks can be very, very well hidden too. I was able to find a few of them based on pure instinct, but then there are some that I would not have been able to find on my own without looking them up online. Same goes for the boos, which also return from the first game, and look really weird when their mouths are closed. You don't have a boo radar letting you know if there are any boos nearby. You just have to pay extremely close attention to the layout of each room and shine the dark light on anything that might be missing. So actually finding the boos is a little harder this time, but I think it can make locating them more rewarding. Meanwhile, the process of catching them is a bit easier, mostly because they don't leave the rooms you find them in now. Although, sometimes one might get stuck in a piano. And all you have to do is shine the dark light on them, grab their tongues, send them flying around the room. Then once their health is low enough, you can suck them up. Then if you catch every single boo in a mansion, you unlock a bonus mission where all you have to do is capture ghosts as fast as you can.
I'm glad that the boos still have different names and personalities too. Some are surprisingly self-aware. Some clearly don't like being compared to boos from the first game.
Some remind me of old computer games I used to play when I was a kid.
I made a boo-boo, yeah.
And then you have this one named Parabola, a symmetrical open plane curve formed by the intersection of a cone with a plane parallel to its side. I mean, boo!
Compared to the first game, I would also argue this one does a little more to make all the other ghosts stand out too. Not to say the original didn't have any variety in how the ghosts behaved, but most of the time it was relegated to the portrait ghosts and other bosses. In Luigi's Mansion 2, presumably to make up for the lack of mini-bosses, they gave the regular ghosts a lot more character. Greenies are the most common ghosts you'll come across, and they often use everyday objects as weapons, or wear things like welding masks, sunglasses, and buckets to keep them from being stunned right away. Then you've got slammers, big red ghosts that attack you with thunderclaps. Hiders are blue lanky ghosts that hide in furniture and throw things at you. Gobbers are fat yellow ghosts that spit on you and don't move when you weaken them. Poltergeists are thin, big-headed ghosts who never shut the hell up. And there are also purple gooey ghosts that trap you inside them and slowly drain you of your health. But, damn it! Wait, what are these things called again? Creeper?
Aw, man.
And like in the first game, you can find special ghosts that move around faster than normal ghosts, but capturing them rewards you with a lot of money. These ghosts, however, are gold, which makes more sense, and they're also a little bit slower and don't flee as quickly as the ones in the original, so they're a little easier to catch now. But sneakers are the worst.
That goes for the shoes, too. And you know what? Shoes in general just suck. If I could, I would never wear them again.
But what do these ghosts do? They sneak up on you, obviously. But every time they appear, Luigi stops whatever he's doing just to react to them. I especially hate it when I get a sneaker's health down to single digits, and just as I'm about to capture them, another sneaker appears and throws me off my groove. And because Luigi gets stuck in the scared animation when they show up, it's left me open to so many attacks from other ghosts around me that I couldn't avoid because Luigi's timbers get too shivered.
These are the worst kinds of distractions. Why can't they be more playful in how they surprise us? Like how Marc catches me off guard when I record my voice.
Distraction!
What? I'm not doing the world a favor.
So aside from King Boo, the boss fights all consist of 3 phases involving a possessor ghost taking on different forms, and then Luigi has to do something to make the ghost pop out and weaken it before finally capturing it. They all might go down in essentially the same way, like we said before, but conceptually they're still very much in line with the series' famously unconventional approach to boss battles. But holy shit, the Secret Mine boss is just straight up terrible. It took me nearly an hour just to beat it the first time. You have to fire lumps of coal at this giant ice monster's face to break away the crystals blocking it, then fire one down its throat to get the possessor ghost to come out. There were so many times where the bomb just touched the tip of its teeth, and others where I swear it should have gone down all the way, but for some reason it didn't count. And you can't fire the turret too many times or else it'll overheat, forcing you to start the entire fight all over again, no matter which of the 3 phases you were on. But the turret's temperature cools down in between each shooting section, so why can't it cool down during the shooting sections?
Surrounded by ice!
Not even the actual fight with King Boo is anywhere near as annoying. He'll try zapping you with lightning or chasing you down these hallways that are just as eager to kill you, but ultimately it's a matter of making spike balls drop on his head like a heavy lord, then sucking him up. With King Boo captured, Luigi is then sent back to Treacherous Mansion along with Mario's portrait, and Professor Egad advises him to use the Dark Light to release him.
I got it. Ho ho! Yes!
Well, bye. Nah, of course Luigi lets him out, and once again the brothers are reunited.
Ah, Luigi, you saved Mario.
Aww.
Next level games, you're gonna need to start paying my medical bills because you can't keep making my heart melt this much. Then with help from the Toads, the Dark Moon pieces are brought back together, it returns to the sky, all the ghosts in Evershade Valley are turned back to normal, and with the press of a button, Professor Egad releases them from the vault. Wait, he also has a setting for releasing all the boos? Why would he need that? What is wrong with this guy? Well, anyway, everyone gets together to take a picture, and that brings us to the end of Luigi's Mansion 2.
Wait, what about the multiplayer?
What multiplayer?
The ScareScraper mode.
Oh, yeah, that thing. Well, it's definitely there. Nowadays, this game is often considered to be the oddball of the series since Next Level ultimately went back to formula for Luigi's Mansion 3, completely ditching the mission-based structure entirely while still bringing back elements like the strobe bulb and the dark light, which thankfully doesn't overheat anymore. I'm glad I finally got around to beating this game, and despite some of its faults, I had a good time playing it. But it mostly just makes me appreciate the third game more for everything it carries over from this one and improves on it, while also blending them with elements from the first game to give us, in my opinion, the definitive Luigi's Mansion experience. So in general, you could say I respect this game more than I actually like it, but I still enjoyed my time with it. And hey, if Nintendo trusted Next Level Games enough to even make a third one, that's gotta count for something. One thing I will say this game has over Luigi's Mansion 3 is that it doesn't seem to have as much padding, but that's not to say it isn't there. The third game really doubled down on those Polterpup missions, especially by swapping him out with Polter Kitty. Also, what happened to his pupils? Why are they gone again? Weren't they supposed to indicate that he's good?
Something I think a lot of fans of the first game took issue with was the fact that Luigi's Mansion 2 has a much lighter and more comedic tone. The original is also mostly lighthearted in nature, but it could also be genuinely creepy and unsettling. This game has some of those kinds of moments too, but overall it's definitely meant to be a little goofier than the original. Less Haunted Mansion and more Muppets Haunted Mansion. We mostly prefer the creepier vibes of the first game like a lot of people do, but I still don't mind this game taking a lighter approach, because when it wants to make you laugh, it does its job well enough.
And that's good, because we need Marcy's laughter to ensure our survival. And you know, for a 3DS game, it packs a pretty good sense of presentation. The music is appropriately atmospheric, and like the first game, you mostly hear the same theme throughout your whole journey. It's obviously not as iconic as the original game's theme, but it's still a good piece, and I like how each mansion has their own variation of it, so you're not just hearing the exact same song for hours on end. Graphically, it holds up nicely, and the 3D is surprisingly well implemented. I didn't play this game with the 3D on that much, but when I did, it made everything pop without feeling gimmicky or distracting. Depth perception isn't always very good, however, even with the 3D turned on. There were quite a few times where I swear I could have been able to flash some creatures or stun ghosts, but it just didn't work for some reason. And sometimes when trying to grab coins after grabbing a gold bulb, I felt like I should have been able to grab them, but didn't always manage to do so on my first try. But dear God, this game has one of the most inconsistent frame rates I've ever seen. It constantly alternates between 60 frames per second, then 30, then 12. And this isn't an issue with my capture software or the connection. I've tested multiple games with this setup and all of them run flawlessly, so the frame rate issue is very much because of the game. Also, if anyone can tell us what exactly causes Luigi and Egad's models to freeze in the bunker at the start of each mission, please do. It's very unsettling.
Well, I really appreciated all the nods to the first game. The map to the mansion is hung on the wall in Luigi's house. The original Luigi's Mansion theme plays in the bunker and is used as Professor Egad's ringtone. Luigi entering Gloomy Manor for the first time plays out exactly like the opening of the first game. There's a big boo fight in Treacherous Mansion that reminded me a lot of Boolossus.
Only it's a lot more tedious.
There's even another piano-playing ghost, which I guess is now a reoccurring thing in the series. Pressing directions on the D-pad also makes Luigi say, "Hello," in different ways, and later, after he realizes that Mario's been captured, he'll start calling out to Mario instead, like in the first game. They even reused some of his clips from that game as well.
Mario! 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 Mario!
I also really enjoy doing this in the most ridiculous moments, like when Luigi opens a chest.
Mario!
I don't think you're gonna find Mario in there, buddy. I love Luigi's characterization here. Apparently the developers took inspiration from Mr. Bean, and you know what? I can see it. He has this bumbling, wide-eyed demeanor, and a lot of his animations are just so cute, especially when he celebrates catching all the ghosts in an area while he has a toad on the end of the poltergust, or when a bunch of ghosts impede his progress and he's just like, hey, come on, what the hell? Sure, he might scream when falling from just 6 inches off the ground sometimes. But everything Luigi does in this game just makes me smile. But of course, there's still the matter of the recently released Switch version, Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, which came out back in June of this year. This port was handled by a company called Tantalus Media, which mostly seems to specialize in porting old Nintendo games to newer consoles, seeing as how they also handled the HD versions of Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword. They also made Cars Mater National for the Game Boy Advance.
Why is that important?
It isn't. Now, at first I thought talking about this version would add a lot more time to this video, but unlike Mario vs. Donkey Kong on the Switch, this isn't really a full-blown remake. It's more or less a direct port of the 3DS version. So you know what? Thank God, because this video is already long enough as it is. Graphically, it definitely looks better, but also isn't that much of a step up from the original, especially when it comes to the lighting. The frame rate, however, is much more consistent, running strictly at 30 FPS at all times. Why has Nintendo been so shy about higher frame rates recently? But since this is more of a port than a remake, that also means a lot of the same technical quirks I experienced in the 3DS original are still here. Music still restarts in the same spots for no particular reason. This fly trap still briefly disappears before this cutscene plays. The three sisters still don't have any animations in the ghost container. Luigi and Egad's models still freeze during moments in the bunker. Seriously, somebody in the comments, please explain this to us. This is really starting to freak me out. And I swear, there are times where the models would freeze in places that they didn't in the original. I also discovered this version has some oddities of its own. This one isn't necessarily technical, but I found it weird how, when sending ghosts down to the vault, there are moments that could be skipped in the original, but not in the HD version. A few did give me a good laugh, however. There was one time where I walked into a torch and knocked it over, then it started freaking out on the stairs. On another occasion, I caught 2 greenies and their shovels got stuck in interesting ways, one in midair and one in the floor, making it move around on its own. But that's nothing compared to the mysterious dancing brick.
Oh gosh! Look at it go!
Apparently Luigi's allergic to dancing bricks. One time I had Luigi call out to Mario, and that for some reason caused the music to start over. But then I found that if you mess around with the D-pad just before EGAD calls Luigi on the dual screen, somehow Luigi will lose all feeling in his left arm and it freezes until he puts the DS away. And it's not just a one-time thing. You can do this every time EGAD gives you a call. So if you ever wanted to know what wiping your hands with just one hand looks like, Luigi's Mansion 2 HD is the game for you. Oh, and you'd think with Switch controls having more precise gyro sensors than the 3DS that the motion controls would be better in this version, but personally I found them to be a little too sensitive at times. I fell off these narrow beams while walking across them way more than I did in the original, and when trying to get the last gem in Secret Mine, it was like the controls were almost fighting against themselves. As you can see, to get the gem, you have to fire snowballs at these hiders and hit them before the timer runs out. I did it with no problem in the original, but while recording the Switch version, I failed to get it the first time, and then I missed it again when going back to this part after beating the game. I did eventually manage to get the gem on my third attempt, but that was on my downtime when I wasn't recording footage. My best gaming moments always happen when I'm on the toilet. Ironically, the Secret Mine boss was a lot easier, but I'm not sure if that was purely because of the precision of the Switch controls or because I actually knew what I was getting into this time. Wait a second, I spent nearly an hour trying to beat this boss in the 3DS version and got a 3-star rank, but I beat it in less than 5 minutes on my first try in the Switch version and I only got a 2-star rank? You see what I mean? This game is so picky. Well, despite that, the controls in general are much more comfortable and less awkward than the 3DS version. In that game, you could make Luigi look up with the X button and look down with the B button, which also acted as a run button. And playing on an original 3DS with the Circle Pad Pro or a new 3DS with the C-Stick won't remap the aiming controls to that extra nipple. In the Switch version, you can use the right stick to look around and aim like in Luigi's Mansion 3. And the vacuum functions are now mapped to the ZL and ZR buttons, while the L and R buttons now act as alternatives to the dark light and strobe bulb respectively. The map also appears in the upper right corner, and you can pull it down by pressing the minus button. It is a little inconvenient sometimes, and needing to pull it up constantly to check which locations are marked instead of it just showing up when an exclamation mark appears kinda sucks, but any map is better than no map, I guess. Well, at least both games still let you do this.
From what I gather, Luigi's Mansion 2 HD was met with a mostly lukewarm response. The less enthusiastic reactions seemed to come from people who already played the original 3DS game and expected the Switch port to bring a little more to the table. But I think it's nice that people who haven't played it before at least have options. If you want to play this game in its original form and don't mind choppier frame rates, go with the 3DS version. But if you want better graphics, more comfortable yet somewhat overly sensitive controls, and something more readily available, go with the Switch version. You'll pretty much get the exact same experience either way.
Man, it sure feels good to finally have this game under my belt.
I bet it does.
Wait, do you hear that?
Hear what?
It sounds like an angelic choir, and it's coming from outside.
Wait, there's an outside of this room?
Hello! Thanks for watching, everybody. God, my throat still hurts after that. Anyway, before we go, I want to give another special thank you to our superstar supporters for this month, Henry Newman, Red Rack, and Jake Winans, not in that order. And also, a special thanks to the person whose name is on the screen right now. But yeah, one more to go, and that's it for this year. I'm currently working on the script right now. I already have all the footage recorded, and oh boy, it's gonna be a big one. And I doubt I'm gonna get it out in time for Christmas. Not that I'm not gonna try, but if I don't, I'm not gonna make a big deal out of it like with Mario Wonder last year. It'll just come out when it comes out.
And you bet it will be good.
Oh yeah, I'm so excited to get to that video. But yeah, that's the end of this video. Sorry we didn't get it out in time for Halloween, but it's not a big deal. Almost forgot my own outro again. But yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff coming in the future, so until we meet again, this is Mark.
And Marcy.
Bidding you all a smashing farewell. Be good, behave, be safe. Happy Thanksgiving if you live in America, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.